Alright YouTube, Nate Hills coming to you live from my man cave. It's snowing out, I live at 9,000 feet, and this seems like an appropriate time to do a bike check for you. Most popular question I get on my Follow Cam Friday video series is, what bike are you riding? What bike are you riding? Which bike are you riding? Which Yeti are you riding? I'm just gonna give you guys a rundown of spec, parts, a little bit of the theory behind my setup, why I run, what I do, just for fun. And if you guys have questions, you can leave them in the comments. Yeah, let's get into it here. So what I have here, this is my Yeti SB5.5c. This is basically 5.5 inches of travel. It's a 140 platform. I have it paired with a 160 fork. So what do I do with this bike? This is a lot of bike. It's probably the most capable bike I own. It's very similar to my 6, except it's got bigger wheels, right? This is almost a downhill bike from like 5 years ago. It feels that capable, and pretty interesting place where we're at with trail bikes right now, where you can get away with riding really rugged shit on your trail bike, and this is a good example of a bike that can put up with just about anything you can throw at it. I've got a lot of time like in the Whistler Bike Park on this. I ride a lot of Keystone, local downhill trails, that sort of thing. This is the bike I choose when it's going to be rough and scary and be, you know, jumping huge gaps or risking life and limb type bike, right? I am about 5'9.5" on a tall day. This is a medium frame, so that's about perfect for me with a 50mm stem. That feels spot on. Alright, so a little bit of the drivetrain theory here. As far as gearing goes, my general thought there is to run the largest front ring that I can. There's some benefits to that. Chain wrap, for one, keeps your chain on better. It makes less noise. It's actually more efficient if you can push a bigger front chain ring. There's no reason to run smaller really than a 36, I don't think. I live in the mountains. I ride the mountains all day long. 36 on Eagle is like a 32 on, say, XX1, right? My whole thing is that I want to be in the middle of the cassette under when I'm really sprinting, like in a race run, usable gears. I'm not as concerned about the 10 tooth or the granny, but what's happening kind of in the middle of the cassette where I'm actually throwing down hard power and making efforts. So the bigger front ring I can get away with running. It kind of optimizes my chain line, and that's kind of the theory behind all of that. I've been running a single ring for 15 years. I've never liked front derailleurs. I never have, and they're not going to come back, so I'll never have to. But yeah, that's pretty much been my go-to setup for years, whether I was racing downhill or cross country or just out riding, whatever. I've always run a single ring, so this isn't really like a new thing. The 1x12 is, you know, a system that I've been waiting for years, right? More gear range with a single ring, ultimate setup for what I do. I always run a chain guide. This is a MRP SXG guide. Doesn't weigh a whole lot, just a teeny bit of added security. The SRAM stuff works really, really well. It's gonna hold your chain on there 99.9% of the time, but the one time that it doesn't, it's gonna be in a race run or something, so I'm just gonna run a chain guide. I've run a chain guide on every bike I've owned for 15 years. Except for my road bike. There's actually a skid plate on the bottom, right? So if I get lazy and I start riding like a hack, I can take some impacts right here. It's not gonna taco my chain ring. That's huge, because if your chain ring bends at 90, it turns out you can't really go anywhere. I am a Maxxis athlete, so obviously Maxxis rubber on my bikes. I have been liking the Aggressor combo with the DHF in front. That's pretty much been my go-to for most of the season, almost anywhere. Where I live, it's all hardpack and rock, and it's fast and harsh, and this Aggressor rolls really fast, and it has real side knobs, so it's pretty much the ultimate back tire for now. I'll throw on a mini and DHF in the rear at times, or high roller I like a lot. It just depends on what I'm riding and the conditions, but this is like my go-to kind of tire lately. I will run this thing in a double down casing. As far as pressures go, usually in the rear, I'm somewhere between 27 to 31 or 2. If I'm like riding in Moab on hard rocks, go a bit higher. Up front, usually general rule of thumb is like 2 psi less, and that usually feels pretty good. I have it set up to be pretty plush. I do have a RockShox Monarch Plus taking care of the suspension duties out back with a medium tune. That feels pretty good. I set it up at about 150 pounds to start. I usually run that thing wide open, and I'll put a little bit of pedaling platform with the switch when I'm doing extended climbs, but honestly this bike pedals really well, and running the suspension wide open is kind of where you want to be to get all those benefits. 160 Lyric up front. I do run Lyrics on every single bike that I own. I always liked Pike, but honestly the little bit of added chassis stiffness of the Lyric is much appreciated. Gives me a little more confidence descending. I do run a fender on here all the time. People give me funny looks and can't get their head around it, but honestly it doesn't weigh anything, and I do a lot of filming. You might have seen some videos that I put on YouTube, and this basically keeps the crap off of my GoPro lens, right? As far as brakes go, I've been running SRAM's Guide Ultimates. I do like the carbon lever. I know it sounds crazy, but I live at 9,000 feet and it's always cold out, and the carbon transfers the heat a little bit differently than aluminum. So it keeps my hands warm, and warm hands are happy hands, and I can ride downhill really fast when my hands aren't freezing. So that's kind of my rationale there behind the carbon brake lever setup. I weigh 150 pounds with all my shit on. These brakes are powerful. That's more than enough to stop me on a dime when I need them. I basically run the same rotors on all bikes, all wheel sizes, all the time, just so it makes my life easy. I can swap things around. I don't have to remember different rotor sizes. It's just simple. I like to kind of streamline it like that. I do run metallic pads all the time. They make a little bit more noise than the organics. I'll trade that for the stopping power, and mostly they last forever. So I'm not working on my bike. Less time I'm working on my bike, more time I'm riding my bike, and that's a good thing. I don't have a mechanic. I'm a privateer, so anytime I can cut some of that maintenance out of my life, that's more time that I have to ride or make videos. And this is an old trick from the downhill days. So always take a little piece of tubing and put it over your shifter housing, this guy right here. So just that little piece right there keeps the housing from snagging on things, or keeps it from shattering essentially. And once you crack the housing, then you got to replace the whole thing, right? Which is a pain in the ass. So if you can just wrap it with a little bit of tubing, that's a sweet tip, just to keep the maintenance down, like we talked about. So I do have a Stages power meter that I run through my Garmin head unit here. I don't geek out too hard on the numbers and things. It's useful for racing, so I can sort of track my data and look at my power and see how tired I really am in comparison to how I feel. It's good to have some numbers and sort of some things to cross-reference when you're trying to get your head around what happened in your race run, that sort of thing. It's also good to have a log of all that stuff, so from a year-to-year basis you can adjust your training and do that sort of thing. I like to keep all my bars the same on all my bikes. Like if I'm going back and forth between my dirt jumper hardtail to this bike, it feels crazy enough, right? So if I can keep the cockpits the same, that's a good peace of mind for me. So this is a 750 millimeter wide carbon bar. It's a 5x7 sweep, pretty normal, and then 20 millimeter rise, kind of what I like. I run a 50 millimeter stem on almost every bike that I own, so except for the dirt jumper, I guess I have a 40 on that, but 50 feels pretty good for kind of pedaling all day, but still being, in control of the front of the bike. I like to keep my cockpit clean and tidy. As far as setup goes here, I do have Ergon GE1 grips with the newer sort of rubber compound. It's basically a softer compound, a little bit easier on the hands, and they're super comfy, ride all day and never have any issues, this sort of thing. I do like to run my reverb on the bottom left. It feels like, you know, your old front shifter might have back in the day. It's just in the perfect place to get my thumb on it. I would like to use a matchmaker on here like I have on this side, but I like this thing inboard a little more, and I don't want to compromise my brake position, and I don't want to have to actually move my hand to reach the remote, so that's perfect placement for me. And then on this side I do run the matchmaker because there's no problem reaching that with my thumb, and my brake's in the right position, so that's pretty clean, tidy cockpit. I do have an Ergon SME3 Pro saddle here. What can I say about it? It's pretty much comfortable, ride it all day, no complaints. I've ragdolled my bike a few times and this thing bounces off the ground and keeps taking the hits. I always carry a tube under here. Basically just use a little cheap piece of Velcro and strap that thing on. It's always there. It stays, and if I need it, usually I'll give it to somebody on the trail because they don't have one, right? And on the topic of weight, I don't weigh my bikes. Not that I don't care, but like, this thing's built as light as I would want to build it for the type of routing I do, so I don't really need to obsess over like what does it weigh, because it doesn't really matter. So yeah, it's probably 29 pounds, whatever, as it is. Like, plenty competitive in the enduro market, and I have full confidence in this build and its durability, which is more important, peace of mind at the end of the day. So I am running a SRAM Room 50 wheels on this bike. Pretty good mix of durability and stiffness. They're reasonably lightweight for what they are. I was surprised how durable they are actually for the weight. And yeah, I pretty much rode these wheels all year. I like aluminum. I find myself doing a lot of multi-day races, and if you have a problem with a carbon wheel, you're pretty much done. If you dent an aluminum wheel, you put a wrench on there and you bend it back, and then you keep racing. So I do run a Reverb Stealth on here. I don't think I could ride a bike without a dropper post. I don't have one on my dirt jumper. Every other bike I own, dropper post, obviously. Something else that's unique on this bike is I do run the Maxwell Stealth in the front. It's basically just like the regular Maxwell, except it doesn't have the quick release mechanism. This is a good stiff solution, and I used to hit my quick release on rocks and things, so from that perspective, this is lighter, cleaner, and stiffer setup. In the back, I've sort of done the same thing. I have an axle that's made by Ibis. It's basically a 5mm interface, and same thing, no quick release to get hung up on things. I feel like the boost rear ends are so wide nowadays that if you can, you know, keep the axle width at a minimum, that's better, because otherwise it's like you have two derailleurs that you could rip off. I get a strange amount of questions about my Garmin. So this thing basically attaches right on the handlebar here with this little plastic mount. SRAM makes it, sits over the top cap, keeps your computer nice and centered. Just a little guy. It's a Garmin Edge 500. Please don't hesitate to ask me questions. I'll be happy to answer them if I didn't get to anything. Please subscribe to my channel, like this video if you're stoked on it. Thank you guys for watching my Follow Cam Friday videos. Been having a good time making those. Keep the stoke levels high. Thanks for watching them. I really do appreciate it. A new Follow Cam Friday episode every week at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time.